Well, good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Vale of White Horses Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Max Thompson and I'll be chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held in our office at Abbey House, Abingdon. Voting members are here in person as required, but officers and public speakers are able to join remotely if they wish through Microsoft Teams. The meeting is also being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing. I have 5 housekeeping announcements. Firstly, for those joining remotely, when you're not speaking, please ensure your microphone is muted and your camera is off. If you share a presentation on the screen, please stop sharing as soon as it is not needed. Public speakers must only have their cameras on and be unmuted when addressing the committee or answering questions of clarification in their designated slots. Item number 2, evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is in the corridor immediately to your right, and standard assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. So on arriving at this meeting, you should have read the emergency evacuation procedure and signed the fire register. So please inform Democratic Services if you have not done so. Thirdly, can everyone please ensure their mobile telephones and any other devices switch to silent during the meeting? Fourthly, members of the public who wish to leave the meeting after the application they're interested in has been debated, you're very welcome to do so, but please can you do so quietly? And fifth, when the meeting is ended, I will ask for confirmation the live stream has ended. At that point, please make your way out of the building, remembering to sign out as you leave. Final point, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. And I ask that members of the public attending here in person and also those virtually, please do not shout out or disrupt the committee's deliberations outside of those who have registered to speak in their allocated slots. Okay, so I now move on to agenda item 2, which is apologies for absence. Emily Barry, do we have any apologies for absence this evening?
We do, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Mike Pickhills, who's substituted by Councillor Scott Horton.
Thank you very much. And would you mind taking a roll call so people online know who's here?
Absolutely. Councillor Max Thompson?
Yes, here.
Councillor Val Shaw?
Yes, here.
Councillor Ron Batstone?
Here.
Councillor Cheryl Briggs?
Here.
Councillor Jenny Hannaby?
Here.
Councillor Scott Horton?
Here.
Councillor Robert Madison is not with us yet, and Councillor Jill Rayner.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. I now turn to the minutes of the meeting held on 18th of October 2023. Does anyone have any comments on these?
I'd like to propose them and apologise that it was just the one that had to be my area.
So we have a proposal, we accept as correct records. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Rayner, thank you very much. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. It does occur to me that it's possible that Councillor Madison is outside the building.
There is an officer in
Right,
reception.
perfect. I just wanted to check. Perfect. Before we move on to our items. Fourth item is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this evening?
No.
Councillor Rayner.
Ward Councillor for item 7.
Okay,
I would like to make a statement.
thank you very much. And we'll ask you to stand down from the table during that item. And of course, you're welcome to make a statement in the council slot. Agenda item 5, urgent business. Emily Hamilton, do we have any urgent business this evening?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And then finally, public participation. Just to announce, we've got a number of speakers on the first 3 items we'll be considering this evening. We also received a number of statements that were read and have been read and circulated around the committee. It's possible we'll make reference to those in the debate, and thank you very much for those and for all of you who have registered to speak this evening. So I now move on to our first item this evening, which is Cobweb Buildings, the Lane Lyford. Catherine Canavan, I believe you're presenting on this one. Oh,
good evening. Can I share my screen? Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't yet see your screen.
Okay.
I'll let you know when we can see it. So I can see that now. So please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Canavan. I'm Senior Planning Officer at the Vale of White Horse. The first application to be considered is a retrospective application for 2 commercial buildings on the Cobweb site at Lyford. I just want to let you know Ian Marshall from OCC's Transport Development Management team is also available online to answer any highways questions as they come up in this item. As an introduction to the site, permission was originally granted for a series of workshops in 2005, seeking agricultural diversification for the storage and distribution of golf buggies. Although the proposal had previously been dismissed at appeal, the 2005 development was secured under a personal permission tied to Janetta Limited, and considered to be acceptable on this basis. It's clear that a number of different businesses now occupy the site, and there is no record of when Janetta Limited left the site or ceased trading. While this amounts to a breach of condition, it's likely occurred for a period of over 10 years and is therefore immune from enforcement action. In 2017, permission was granted for 2 commercial buildings, shown in blue, one for office use and one for car repair, storage and distribution. The permission also included areas of parking and boundary landscaping. Although the 2 buildings have been constructed, they're not in accordance with approved plans. I will briefly outline the differences, which can be seen on the following comparison plan. Building 1 on the southern edge of the site was built 22 metres further south than approved. Building 2 was built 7 metres further south. Building 2 is in use as car mechanic auto repairs, but the approved use was office use. The internal layout and openings seen on the elevations reflect this change. There's also been reconfiguration of car parking, locating one area on the western edge further south, and increasing the size of the car park on the eastern edge. The landscape planting has been adjusted to respond to these changes. The depth of the woodland planting ranges from 6.5 metres along the southern edge, increasing to 21 metres on the eastern edge, and this is to be made up of silver birch, oak, beech, rowan, etc., and to be planted at a height of 1 metre. It's anticipated that the full grown heights would range from 8 metres to 30 plus metres. The key concern raised during the consultation process relates to large vehicles and transporters travelling to and from the site through the surrounding rural roads. Light spill and proposed lighting is also a concern. 2 key changes from the approved development are the increase in parking space on the eastern edge and the change in type of vehicle accessing the site. The proposed landscaping will appropriately screen the additional parking area and in time will provide further screening to the lighting. The way in which the site is currently used as car mechanic workshops and storage has seen an increase in vans and car transporters using the site. However, in light of the previously approved commercial uses and the widening of the permitted development rights for commercial uses, now known as Use Class E, the impact of the as-built commercial uses is not substantially different in highways terms. Further to recent discussions with the highways team, 2 further conditions are recommended in order to manage large vehicles travelling to and from the site. This would also limit the number being directed by sat-nav through villages and inappropriate country lanes. These conditions include signage, which is already on the conditions list. This would include introducing a gate to the western track along with signage. This would direct large vehicles to exit via the main entrance. Signage would also include turn right signage at the main entrance, main exit, and would direct vehicles away from Lyford and Charney Bassett towards the A415 and A420. A routing agreement to reinforce travel to and from the site away from the smaller villages is also proposed, and a travel plan to formalise an agreed travel plan to formalise an agreed travel arrangement to and from the site. This would be made clear to contractors and delivery drivers by the businesses on site, but would be tied by condition. With these measures in place, it provides a mechanism to enforce the route and to take action if it is not adhered to. Turning next to lighting. During the application process, the 2 lighting columns on the southern boundary have been disconnected and removed. Lighting on the 2 commercial buildings faces predominantly into the yard, other than on the gable end of building 2. During the application, these lights have been angled down to prevent any significant light spill beyond the site. Conditions are recommended restricting the constant use of the lights to 7 AM to 7 PM and to be on a movement sensor outside these hours. To finish, I'd like to provide an update on conditions. In addition to those listed at the start of the report, it is recommended that a routing agreement and travel and plan are added. This is subject to agreement by members. In terms of landscaping, which was secured under the previous permission but not implemented, it is recommended that if permission is granted, the buffer landscaping is planted within 3 months, in other words, by the end of February 2024. This would then fall within the winter months and provide the best chance of trees becoming established. The hedging would come at a slightly later date, following the completion of the works to parking areas, but would still be time limited. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. I pass back to the Chair for further consideration.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We'll return to you for some questions once we've heard from our speakers on this item. So our first speaker on this item is Mike Trippett, a representative of Lyford Parish Meeting. Mr. Trippett, are you here? Please, thank you very much. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us. You'll have 3 minutes as and when you're ready, and there may be some questions from committee afterwards. So okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening, Mike Trippett, Lyford Parish Clerk. I'd like to start by saying we do support local farmers to diversify their income, provided those plans are sympathetic to the community, countryside and environment. So, for example, the parish did not object to the 2017 cobweb building application, as it appeared at the time to be in keeping with the rural environment. And for the same reasons, the parish supported Lyford Grange's plans to develop holiday lets. And I'd go on to say that when issues have arisen, the parish has offered practical solutions. For example, the community paid for a lighting consultant to advise on lighting options for the cobweb buildings. And we are grateful to the owner, Mr. Cottrell, that this is now being addressed. However, we have 2 significant concerns about the revised plans on community, surrounding countryside and environment. First of all, parking. The planning officer's report states the car parking layout has altered from the previous approval. To be clear, the parking capacity to the east of the site is now at least double that of the original plan. Parking to the west of the site will effectively be replaced by parking space that's now available at the centre of the site. And this leads on to our second problem, which is traffic. The increased parking space is there to accommodate increased traffic flow never envisaged when the application was approved in 2017. We highlighted in April the volume and movements of white vans has grown considerably, with corresponding increases in pollution, litter and waste, including human waste discarded in the ditches outside of the site. Increase in noise, increase in road safety risk. It's not being melodramatic to say the community is pretty fearful about the volume and speed of white vans. And finally, damage to local roads, which were not designed to cope with the volume and size of traffic. This has all had an adverse impact on the community and contributed to a degradation of the environment. We therefore disagree with Oxford CC Highways officer's opinion that there's been no intensification of activity or that the quantum of parking remains the same as permitted or that there will be no adverse traffic impact. We would respectfully ask the planning committee evaluates the impact of the decision on the community and the environment.
Have 30 seconds.
Our requests are not unreasonable. We request first the parking spaces contained within the perimeters of the original plan that was approved by the relevant authorities and local community, and the woodland copse and surrounding planting scheme is carried out as originally approved. Secondly, the planning committee we'd like to impose a credible timetable for implementation and oversight of the proposed conditions, including landscaping, surface drainage and parking. And finally, we need to understand precisely how the planning officer's compliance point regarding parking and vehicle storage in areas marked as parking will actually be enforced.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now ask if any of the members of the committee have any questions and clarification for you. Councillor Halley.
So that's all right, Tim. Yeah, I can see this is very frustrating when you agree a plan and then it evolves in this way. So what sort of traffic comes through the village now?
It's
what type of vehicle?
I think mainly white van. It's the scale of the white van traffic, but there are transporters as well. but I would say it is essentially white van traffic. Lots of it.
It's the intensity of
It's the scale of it. It's the scale of it. I go right back to my opening remarks. We're not against farmers diversifying income, but it has to be in sympathy with the area. This is clearly way beyond the scale that was approved in 2017. And you've only got to look at the footprint of the parking space that was just shown. We have a company working there. It's great to see successful businesses. One Motion describes itself as a leading UK and European logistics company. Great. That is not, it should not be seated in a rural environment on the corner of a farm. There are white vans in and out constantly. We have neighbours on the approach that would say the entrance into the driveway is now used as a lay-by to allow these vehicles to cross. Now, I understand there's a proposal to put signage in, and at the interim stage, we said no to that because we felt it's just disguising the problem. The signage has no influence how vehicles arrive, and they'll arrive from anywhere. And I don't know, you tell me if the signage is legally enforceable on exit, or whether people will simply look at their sat nav and drive off the shortest route to the 420 and out west.
And there's proposals to have signage and to direct the traffic onto the A420. Would that be a better prospect if you could reduce the traffic going through the village?
The heart of the matter is scale. The heart of the matter is that parking space is twice the size. It accommodates twice the number of vehicles, and therefore we have twice the level of traffic flow. I genuinely not really. I'm not a road expert, but I'd be interested to see how a transporter would get on going right. And there are better people and better informed than me. But the issue is scale. It's the scale, it's the volume of traffic.
And we have our highways officer here, so we'll be able to address questions to them later on. I have a question, which is that we've heard that if we're minded to approve this application, that the landscaping condition, I think it was said, would come in before February. So you asked for sort of plausible and reasonable timeframes. I just want to confirm, do you see that as a reasonable timeframe for the landscaping to be at least started in terms of the big tree coverage from February?
Not if it's around the existing proposal for the enlarged car park, no. We want the original car park, the woodland copse, and the landscaping. That is, we're not asking to convert the industrial back to business, and that is the heart of the matter. That's the part of the problem. We're not asking for any buildings to be moved. That would be completely unreasonable. Mm-hmm. What we're asking for is to go back to the original scale of a rural business on a corner of a farm that is appropriate for a rural hamlet.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? In which to say thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
And I now call upon our next speaker, a representative of Charlie Bassett Parish Council, Trevor Brown, who's speaking in objection to this application. Mr. Brown, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And as with everyone else, you'll have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Okay, as you've already said, I'm Trevor Brown. I'm the parish clerk at Charlie Bassett. Those of you not familiar with the geography of the area, Charlie Bassett is less than a mile to the west of the application site. We have made comments on the application already. They've been summarised in the officer report. I apologise for sending yet further paperwork to you in advance of the meeting. The reason for that was that there was some, as you know, some late plans submitted with this application, and we felt that we just wanted to add to what we had already said. I think though that submission has been circulated to you, and hopefully you've had a chance to read it, so I won't repeat much of what it says. We have a huge amount of sympathy for what Mike Trippett has already said in terms of the scale of the development. I think we feel, however, as joining parish, and as our submissions have already said, our main concern has to be the route that traffic takes to this site. in particular the commercial traffic and the lorries. I've already provided you with a photograph of one of the car transporters. I'm not saying they all go through Charlie Bassett, but some do. And other firms operating from the site generate other lorry traffic as well. So there are 3 routes basically from the A420 to this site. 2 of them go through Charlie Bassett, and by far the easiest route goes through the village. The route furthest to the east that comes off the A420 at Southmore involves the A415 and a route down to Winter Lane that doesn't involve a route through a village. And that was the route that was first discussed and agreed at the public inquiry that your officer has already referred to.
I have 30 seconds.
Unfortunately, that route wasn't controlled at the time that the permission was granted. So we're very pleased to hear the late work that's been done by the officers to put forward to you a recommendation that permission only be granted if a routing agreement is in place. We urge you to take that step and not to grant permission without an adequate routing agreement. We don't know enough about the detail of that yet. And if there is any opportunity for us to be involved in that, we would be very grateful.
I think we may well ask our officer about that, but thank you very much for your time. There may be some questions, clarification of you. So any questions? I have one, which is that I saw in your statement, and thank you for sending the statement in advance. Don't apologise, it's very helpful for us to see. You said you included a photo of the lighting as it was in 2021. And I would be curious to know your perspective now. Now the 2 big pillars, or whatever they're called, have been removed and the lighting has been dipped downwards. How is the lighting now?
It's quite different. So apologies for putting a historic photograph in. I mean, that's probably what kicked the whole ball rolling 2 years ago. But yes, the lighting is quite different. We very much welcome the removal of the, I call them the gantry towers that support the taller of the lights, and the conditions that are recommended by the officer to make sure that basically the lighting that has been improved is the lighting that remains.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Can't see any, so I'll say thank you very much for your time this evening. And I now call upon our next speaker, Henry Venners. Mr. Venners, thank you for joining us. As everyone else, you have 3 minutes as and when you're ready.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I was probably really only going to try and direct my comments to the comments of the previous speakers in terms of the differences between the schemes, in that you've been asked to try and slightly turn the clock back and come up with a different scheme. I'm not in control of the screen, but if the comparison layout could be shown, that would be helpful. Because you'll see there was supposed to be a parking area to the west of the site, which has been omitted, and the present proposal proposes trees to be put in that position. From my
maybe show us where on the, sorry, I'll give you the extra time, but extra 10 seconds or so.
In this area here, there
Thank
was
you.
parking. That's to be taken away with the parking coming this way.
Thank you.
Apologies for those online. The area of planting now proposed is a larger area of planting than was previously proposed. And the council's landscape officer is now in agreement that the scheme for you is an acceptable one. There was a late update by the officer about asking for planting by the end of February. I would ask for the end of March, please, simply because February can be very cold, and the normal planting season would allow up until the end of March in sort of normal planting season. I do understand the committees and the speakers' wishes for that to be resolved at the earliest moment. We're more than willing to work with my client and ourselves to work with the officers, the county council and with the district council to resolve the right turn lane. I myself have driven, I don't know when you left the site, whether you followed the route which has now been indicated to go right out of the site, turn left at the crossroads, right at the next one. You might have noticed that gets to a road without going past another house. That's the way that agricultural large vehicles would have visited the site in the past with Arctic trailers. Previously, for my consultancy, we've acted on other big sites. Soho Farmhouse in the north of Oxfordshire was one where when it was established, there were some concerns about traffic, and we managed to resolve those by providing signage and routing, and also endeavouring to change sat-nav directions by contacting the companies in order to get people to arrive via the preferred route. So I think with the combination of all those things, I can't promise that we could stop all the vans going through the village, because I don't think actually all the vans are associated with this particular site. I noticed where I live near Wallingford, there's just more vans now post the pandemic than there were before. But with those routing controls, that it should alleviate the problems with things in Lyford. You asked a question before about the lighting. I think my client has actually had an email from a member of Lyford village to say thank you for adjusting the lighting. So my client is fine with all the conditions which were mentioned, and like the parish said, to work with the officers to come to a final wording. I've only seen the short wording myself, so I think there probably is a more complex wording and other agreements to make it all fit together.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask if anyone has any questions or clarification. Councillor Hannity.
So obviously your client was quite au fait with the fact that what he was putting there didn't have planning permission, etc. So they moved it. He's moved it around and expanded over the years. So when there was some disquiet about the additional traffic, did you try and do anything to alleviate it?
Apologies, I wasn't involved at that time.
No, but you're now his client. You've obviously spoken to him.
Yeah, the building's being relocated.
Yeah,
was a mistake, because after the grant of planning permission, which was
I
the
think
opposite.
it's quite a big mistake, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
The existing tenants on the site that were in automotive uses said that they would like to take that building, hence why it became an automotive building rather than an office building.
Well, I understand they want to expand if they're doing well. But did your client, what did he have in the day-to-day running? Did he have any day-to-day running in the fact that it was his area and there was concern?
So my client is the owner of the site, and he had asked people to direct the traffic to go right. But since we've become involved and it's become with the Vale White Horse officers, they've imposed signage, and we're going to put a closable gate on the western exit from the site in order to close that off, in order to shepherd people in a better direction.
That's not quite what I'm getting at, but I think people do understand what I'm thinking. That there wasn't much.
There
wasn't much order or looking after the site. That's what I'm trying to say with the extra extension of the business, which were there but not planning permission.
I was trying to work out what the question was from that. Apologies.
Well, so have you had any? Your client, had he not been interested in the sites, the overall development, and listening to the people in the villages who were getting more and more angry about the extra traffic, etc.
The works were done in 2019, and I believe that it was only last year that the concerns really came to light, and since then we've made the application. There may have been some disquiet raised, but that didn't filter through at that point to needing action. So we hope that the ability to put these controls in place as suggested by the officer would alleviate those concerns.
Any further questions? In which case I'll say thank you very much, Mr. Bennett, for your time this evening. And I now call on our final speaker on this application, Councillor Jill Rayner. Councillor Rayner. Councillor Rayner, you know the drill. 3 minutes as and when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Committee. It will be very brief. As you know, my name is Jill Rayner, and I'm a ward councillor representing both Charney and Lyford. I've little to add that has not been comprehensively covered by my parish council colleagues, and for that I'd like to thank them for that. But I did want to voice my agreement with the concerns on this application. A site visit this morning where I counted at least 190 large vans. And then I went round the corner and there was a lot more, but I finished counting by then. Emphasise the sheer number of vehicles that are travelling to and from this site. I would hope that if the committee are minded to approve the application, that conditions to tackle the impact on the surrounding villages and residents are imposed by routing agreements and restrictions as mentioned, and access including time, volume and size of vehicles that use unsuitable roads from both Lyford and Charney Bassett. I would hope that the committee will confirm with officers that suitable conditions are in place to protect both our residents' safety and their rural environments. Lighting, even if only on motion sensors, if not downlights and monitored, will overwhelm the environment yet again. So I would urge the committee to ensure that questions are asked to ensure the light pollution effect on the rural setting is not compromised both now and in the future. Finally, mature and significant planting could help ease light spill and light transference, and also noise. So again, could I ask that clarification on this? Again, a condition ensuring clear requirements on scale of planting, maturity of planting, and size of planting, as well as timing on the landscape plan, as previous landscaping conditions on earlier applications do not seem to have been met. May I thank both parish representatives and the planning committee for their time on this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rayner. I'll just check and see if there are any questions or clarification for you. Can't see any, so I'll say thank you very much. And we're now going to turn to questions for our officer, but also Ian Marshall, the highways officer, who is here. I wonder if maybe we can start with any questions for Ian Marshall, the highways officer. Councillor Hannaby.
Yes, hello, Ian. Can you hear me? Ian, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Councillor Hannaby.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, good evening. Obviously, you've been out to the site, and no, I unfortunately everybody couldn't make it today. I had county. I'm a county councillor and I had all day meetings. However, I do know where it is and where it's placed. So, in your opinion, you do believe that the turn right side on the A420 is A20 is going to be okay for you as a highways officer? You'd be content with that?
It will only work, it won't work in isolation. It needs to work in collaboration with a formal routing agreement and suitable secured through a legal agreement and also suitable conditions as well. So all of those three items together it won't stop everything, but it, like any routing agreement, but it will stop the vast majority, and that's what we're after. And we'd also of the opinion that if the transporters are repeat operators, that they will know about this as well. But also, generally what happens is if there are instances where there are vehicles running through the village where they shouldn't be, then there'll be a once notified second time it'll be they'll be banned from going to that site. That's what we've used elsewhere in the county, and it appears to be quite a successful mechanism to secure the routing. Unless you have people stood on the corner, on every corner in the village, or enforcement officers, you're not going to get 100% result, and that will apply to anywhere in the county. But from what I've been furnished with, I believe that it's a suitable mechanism which is acceptable to the county in this instance.
Ian, just to clarify here, what kind of legal agreements are you thinking about, and why a legal agreement?
So a legal agreement would be done through a 106, whereby it's enforced through not just the district, but the county as well. All conditions as they stand are LPA, local planning authority conditions, and therefore it's down to their enforcement. But with a legal agreement, there's an element of control from the county as well.
Great. Okay, good to know. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Hannah.
Yeah, but obviously Ian knows me and knows what questions I'd ask him, because enforcement is the key to this. Those of us that have had these routes around our own area and know that there are always the cheeky ones that won't comply. So, I mean, how would we do that? Would we come back on if we could identify that it was part of the business? Could we come back on the business on this? You know, how would you enforce this?
Okay. It's going to be rather difficult because, as has already been stated tonight, not every white van or other vehicle it can or is potentially associated with the site, but the site would have would be asked to keep an in and out register of vehicles with the registration numbers, and that's how it could be correlated between whether or not a vehicle flouting the routing agreement is actually connected with the site.
Yeah, so it will be site management. I can see faces that are very sceptical about this, Ian, but is there any other enforcement that we could say that this has got to be done? I just can't, I really am struggling to see how we're going to enforce it. However, you have agreed it subject to your recommendations, as I note in your comments.
That's correct. This is a standard procedure which we use, as I say, county-wide. And beyond what I've just explained tonight, there's nothing practical we can offer in terms of monitoring and enforcement.
Except signage and
yeah, signage, which is all part and parcel of this system of controlment.
Yes, thank you, Ian.
Councillor Wilson.
Ian, if I may, the proposed restriction we're talking about a sign directing drivers to turn right as they leave the site. I noticed that they then need to turn left at the next set of crossroads and right at the following one. If they miss either of those turns, they either end up going through, if I'm reading my map correctly, the village of Garford, or through Southmore. Would we be looking to modify the signage at those two locations as well to try and direct vehicles in the correct direction, or?
No, we wouldn't. We won't. You can't have commercial signs associated with a company as part of a highway sign system. But as explained or has been mentioned before during today, we would be asking that all vehicles associated with the site, when they are given instructions to come to the site, and more importantly when they leave as well, that they abide with the routing agreement and know the consequences if they do not keep to that agreement, or keep to the route, should I say.
Ian, I have a question. So I'm pleased to see the signage, I'm pleased to see the routing agreement, I'm pleased to see the traffic management all attached to this. And actually the S106 will speak to Catherine when she comes back on, because we might be able to tighten up that condition as well, based on what you've said. I think the question I have though is about the scale of the site, so the amount of vehicles. So the judgment of officers is that this doesn't necessarily represent an increase in traffic movements. Can you maybe explain how we've got to that assessment that having more vehicles on the site doesn't necessarily mean there's more traffic movements going on?
Just for clarification, when you say more vehicles on site, is that with regard to storage, or is that actual? Are you talking about more vehicles delivering to the site?
Well, there's a larger number of vehicles on the site because of the way the parking scheme is currently. So when we went on the site visit, there's quite a large number of vehicles. Some are parked back to back. But the report says, well, this doesn't necessarily mean that's an increase in the number of traffic movements. And I wondered how that had been assessed, or if you could comment on how that had been assessed.
Okay, as far as I'm aware, the parking associated with the site is in the main storage, and as you've alluded to already, that the vehicles are Vale Park back to back parking, which would indicate they're there for storage and not associated with vehicles visiting the site, i.e. deliveries, etc., and would be leaving the leaving the facility potentially on a low loader. So in the original application, obviously there's a 2017 application which differs to what's been described tonight. That wasn't part of the assessment from Highways perspective.
Okay.
However, the site was viewed from its potential traffic generation by virtue of the knowing the GFA, the floor area of the units. So we would have looked at 6 years ago. We would have looked at the floor area and its maximum potential, as opposed to what's actually occurring, which could be less.
Right. Any final questions, maybe for Ian Marshall, before we move on to questions for Catherine Canavan? Well, Ian, if you could hold on in case there are more questions for you, but I think we're going to start directing questions towards Catherine Canavan now. So, any questions for our officer on this application? Catherine, I have a question. Are you there?
Yes.
Excellent. So in light of what we've heard, so you've mentioned that in addition to the conditions set out on this report, we're adding 3 further conditions, and we are also clarifying, if we're minded to approve, that the landscaping should be done by February. Ian Marshall just mentioned a S106 legal agreement. Is there a way that we can tighten up one of those conditions or add a further condition in line with what he just stated about enforcement?
So there would be the set of conditions. If it's felt that a legal agreement was required, that would sit alongside the application. It would be in its own separate process to be drawn up. A decision wouldn't be able to be issued until that legal agreement is finalised and signed. Obviously, if I think from an officer's perspective, I feel that we can secure the signage, the routing agreements, and the travel plan just using conditions, because there's obviously planning enforcement to support that. I'll just point out in terms of timings, if a legal agreement was required, it does take a little bit of time to get written up. And just one thing to factor in, this is likely to push back the planting season for the landscaping. So I know they should be treated as separate elements, but it's just to be aware that a decision would be issued later, and this is likely to push back when the landscape could be implemented.
Thank you. Councillor Hannaby.
Yes, hello, Catherine. Whilst the planting is obviously something that is agreeable and must need to be done, I think more the agreement and the traffic is more important, etc., to get correct. What happens if they break the agreement? How can we, as a district or county, enforce that? What is the repercussions if they break it? It could be proven that they're constantly breaking it.
I think the benefit of having that condition on there is we have got something to measure against. We've got an opportunity if residents within the area see, regularly lorries or transporters coming through routes that are outside the routing plan. We've actually got something to tie it back to, which isn't the case on the existing development. So there's a benefit from that perspective. I would have to be.
What can we do? Can we stop? What can we do actually then if they do break it? This is the whole crux of the matter. If you have a legal agreement, people sometimes do break it.
I think Ian was mentioning in terms of how they've treated other sites in terms of stopping certain companies coming to the site.
Exactly right. We can stop entry. Yes, that's what I wanted to say so that people can hear.
So I guess I maybe if Ian's still there, if we could just bring Ian back in, because I think this is a key point. So I think we're curious about whether that S106 legal agreement is more enforceable than the conditions that have been set out in this report. Because I think that's, again, we'll get to the debate in a second, but I want to clarify whether that is more enforceable. Sorry, and I said you could go and then asking questions again.
from our perspective, I mean, they work hand in hand, but a legal agreement which the county are a party to would be more beneficial in terms of enforcement, from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. Further questions either for Ian or for Catherine? I can't see any, so I'm going to. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hannigan.
Sorry, Catherine. It's about the enforcement on lighting. Will that come through our environment district? Should the lighting be an issue? Would it be
yes.
our environment in district that would deal with that? How would we deal with that?
It would be working with colleagues in environmental protection. So we would have the condition there that say if the lighting was being put on for a constant period outside 7 a.m. and 7 p.m, we've got the condition to use planning enforcement to take action on that element. If it was generally just causing light pollution, nuisance to neighbours, there's obviously the environmental protection legislation that sits alongside that, sort of in its own right.
Yes, I think that's very important, especially for the parishes and the residents to know that they have got somewhere to go.
Catherine, I've got another question, sorry, that's kind of come up on lighting. It relates to the mature and significant planting. So when we walked around the site today, noticed, I think it's on the south building, the lights has been dipped, and we've heard that it's not as bad as it was in the past. Now, my understanding is there's supposed to be some fairly significant tree planting around that. So what steps can we take to ensure that, you know, obviously it takes a while for trees to grow, but I think particularly around that lighting on the south side, we'd be keen to see fairly large, thick, mature trees as soon as possible. So within the landscaping condition, what do we have to tighten that up or to ensure that's the case?
As submitted in the application, there is a planting scheme there, and the light green area that was shown on plans has quite a significant depth of buffer. Does include trees. I think we had oak, beech, rowan. Right. There's a good variety of trees there. Within the wording of the condition, we can ask for the specifics of what's going where. And as a standard point within there, we generally ask if there are any trees that fail or are damaged within a 5-year period, then we can ask for replacements to make sure that becomes an established buffer along the whole of the site.
So I mean, I don't know which specific tree I would ask for in that place, but I certainly would ask for specific large mature trees to be in that particular place, because I think that seems to be a point where both lighting and sound could make a big impact. So I don't know if we need to reword that or just within the motion, if it comes forward, to state that there. But I think it would be very easy to do that.
I think we can ask for a detailed landscaping plan, and then at the point that comes in, the landscape officer would advise on whether it's compatible with the buildings, because we don't want anything that's going to put pressure on removal later down the line, and also that effectively builds that buffer to screen the southern and eastern edge of the site.
Thank you very much. Any final questions?
On landscaping, it does say here that he's got no objections, but the standard landscape implementation condition is required. Is a standard enough? I'm asking. So what is a standard?
Was it the idea of that was to as it was worded, was to tie it to the details that we've already submitted. If members feel that we do need further details, that can certainly be included in the detailed wording.
That's why I asked about standard. That's what I would like to enforce, to strengthen that.
Great.
Thank you, Kath.
Perfect. I can't see any further questions, but I would suggest we move into debate. So on that basis, I need to have a motion on this application. Would someone like to put forward a motion on this application? Councillor Hannaby.
I propose that we accept the officer's recommendations with a strengthening in debate. I understand the issues that we've got here, but it's just unfortunate that we haven't caught the enforcement, and that there are people that will actually go ahead with this development. It's 10 years old. I must have sat on it because I've been 10 years on this planning. But enforcement, it's obviously enforcement is the key that we must pass on to our officers and to parishes, that you have to straight away, there's something wrong, get on the case, or else we're left with this hodgepodge now. However, so I have said that the reason being, if we can get the condition right and strengthened, it does fall in employment. It is in the countryside. It's probably not exactly what people want now.
So the motion is to accept the officer's recommendation with a further condition, S106 legal agreement.
Strengthened, and also the landscape.
And on that, and would that be covered in the S106?
So, Chair,
Please.
just clarify. So there'll be 2 additional conditions
Yep.
that Catherine referred to at the start, which will be the signage plan and travel plan. From what I'm hearing, you're then suggesting you'd like the addition of the Section 106 agreement, which will cover the routing agreement, and that would replace the routing condition. Then in terms of the landscaping details, I've heard things and discussions around timing, maturity and size, and that's what you'd like officers to incorporate in the actual detailed wording. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, it really strengthens, because I really don't believe that we can dictate how many vehicles are on the site.
Well, let's see if we have a seconder for that motion. Then we'll move to debate. So, Councillor, sorry.
In terms of the landscaping, I think we want to connect it around the lights as well.
Yes.
So there's that clear.
But not that I want it to strengthen. So therefore, do we not have a design, a landscape design to go by?
Yes, and we would consult with our landscape officer anyway on this.
Exactly. So it would strengthen that area as we have suggested, as the chairman suggested earlier.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, seconder, Councillor Houghton, you have to second that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, now I open the floor to debate. So does anyone have anything to say on this application? Councillor Batstone.
Yes, I fully support the fact that we do need a Section 106 agreement, I think, to tie county in with district and to make sure that they are both involved with the enforcement.
Okay, anything got Councillor Briggs?
Yeah, I'd agree with what you said actually about, the parish councils keeping an eye on it just to make sure that it does go with what they're supposed to be doing.
Because I think our job here is to help the residents to strengthen up this planning application. Because it would have to go to appeal if we turned it down, and we don't know about what that might happen. But I think that we've got businesses on there that obviously are doing well, obviously bringing employment to local. And if we could just protect the villages and the routes by using the proposed, the county proposals with signage, I think that that's possibly all we can do at the moment.
Okay. So with that, I would suggest we take a vote on this application. So all those in favour of the motion to approve? Those against? Any abstentions? I think that's unanimous. Excellent. Thank you very much to all our speakers on that application. I'll invite Councillor Rayner back, and we will move on to our next application, which is, let me get the wording of this right, which is 25 Parklands in Besserley. And Nat Bandy, you're presenting on this one. Good. Citizen. Okay. So thank you very much for that. Please begin when you're ready.
Right, so this application is referred to Planning Committee at the request of the local member. The application seeks permission for the erection of a single-storey side and rear extension following the demolition of the existing garage. The application location plan that is shown The red line contains all the land needed for the development, including access to the public highway. The estate road is private, and that's why the whole estate road is included within the red line area, as this has to go from the public highway to the application site. This does not reflect ownership of the land, and the notice has been served on the owner of this land, as is required to make the application valid, because we have received some comments questioning why all of that land is within the red line there. It's purely a technical thing to make it valid. The applicant is not claiming ownership over that land. They simply have to show the access to the public highway. As you can see, the application site refers to the dwelling in the northern part of the Parklands development, which was built on the former Parklands School within the Oxford Green Belt. This is the existing site plan, and you can see that there's this area of land to the west of the dwelling, between the dwelling and its neighbour. A previous application proposed a detached garage on this land, and during that application process, the council essentially relayed to the applicant that, in our view, based on the approved landscaping and biodiversity enhancement plan that were approved as part of the original application, this land is not residential curtilage, and it is in fact incidental amenity space for the estate, and therefore any development of that land was unacceptable, and hence that application was withdrawn. So this application obviously is a resubmission, but they've deleted any development within that land. So for the avoidance of doubt, there is no change of use proposed to this land, no development, and inclusion within the red line area does not change its lawful use. And therefore it remains as amenity open space. So this is the proposed block plan, and you can see that the new extension will extend, that will be approximately 75 centimetres to the front of the existing garage. So a small front extension, which reduces the length of the driveway slightly. And from there, the extension will follow the same side, will follow the existing garage wall on its side elevation, and then go beyond the existing rear of the house by 3.8 metres and all the way to the other side of the house. So these are the existing elevations with the single-storey garage on the side of the building. And this is the proposed elevations showing the new extensions to the side and rear with their monopitch roofs, including a fully glazed roof for the side element where the existing garage is. So this is the existing floor plan showing that the garage on the side of the house. And this is the proposed floor plan showing that that garage is obviously being demolished, and then this new extension to the side and rear is constructed with a new bedroom to the rear. So it's important for members to be aware that the dwelling has all of its permitted development rights, and there is no planning condition preventing the conversion of the garage to habitable accommodation. Therefore, there is a significant amount of the proposed development that could be carried out without express planning permission being required. The garage could be converted and side and rear extensions erected using these rights. The report states that the wraparound element would exceed the limits of permitted development rights, but on reflection, despite the garage being demolished, its sidewall remains a sidewall of the original house, and hence the wraparound element would be permitted development. So this slide, if you see the blue highlighted area, all of that, it could be erected using permitted development rights. The only part of the extension which would exceed those limits is the small red section. So everything else could be done without express planning permission. And that blue blue line area represents a fallback position, which is material to the assessment of this application. So these are the site photos. So this is the driveway with the red bricks or tiles or whatever you call that. And then this piece of amenity open space beside it. And that's it, with the tree included. And this is the turning space to the front of the drive. This is a bit further back. So I think in my report I reference a turning plan, and this verge on the left hand side is shown smaller on the turning plan than it's shown smaller on the turning plan than is in reality. So that's worth noting that this verge is actually much larger than is shown on that plan. So this is the front elevation of the garage, the rear garden, existing rear elevation, and then a view across the neighbouring rear gardens, including an extension that's already been added to a neighbouring property. So as outlined in the report, officers consider that the impacts of the development are acceptable, especially when the permitted development fallback is considered. It is accepted that the dwelling will lose a car parking space, but this is not considered to result in an unacceptable impact on highway safety through displaced parking on the estate roads. Any harm must also be weighed against the fact that the garage could be converted and the house extended using permitted development rights, which would have the same effect. Therefore, subject to the recommended conditions and in the absence of any technical objections, officers recommend that the planning permission should be granted.
Thanks, Matt. I think we'll return to some questions once we've heard from our speakers on this application. So our first speaker is Jane Cranston, representative of Besseley Parish Council. Besselsley. I'm so sorry. I'm not very good at reading. I know it. Besselsley. I will get that right moving forward. Thank you very much. As everyone else, 3 minutes when you're ready.
It's a very small parish meeting, and the Parklands development has more than doubled the size of Besselsley, so there's a lot of it. I won't take more than a moment of your time, but I've been asked by the residents of Parklands, and I'm very happy to do so, to put some context to the objections which you'll be hearing, the valid technical objections you're hearing from people other than myself. Due to the position of this development wholly within the Green Belt, it was clearly people were concerned at the beginning. It was accepted that there was going to be development, and it was only 4 years ago, and it was developed literally to within an inch of the permitted legislation at the time. The Manor House was a non-designated heritage asset, and Millgate, who were the developers, committed to developing the site really sensitively and in keeping with the open estate nature of the surrounding parkland. And now to give permission in such a short space of time to increasing the house size, removing a garage parking space and allowing increased parking on the road. The road, a lot of the houses have got families in them, the children play, they ride their bicycles. And by putting more cars on there, there's a grave danger that people will have to reverse out of that extension, which is immediately an extra hazard. And so it seems to us that it makes a nonsense of the really very considerable attention that your predecessors, maybe some of you, so recently gave to ensuring that this development was in keeping with sensitive use of the Green Belt. And I think our real concern is that this will set a precedent if one garage is put out of use, but everybody else then copies on it. And you very definitely set the trend for seriously altering the carefully designated country estate style of the development. And while speaking, I don't know whether this is relevant, but I am somewhat perplexed that in the paperwork which I've read on the plan, or that's not on the plan, there's a 1.8 metre wall that's talked about. Should that be built around the property, it would have a really unacceptable detrimental effect on the look and the feel of the public footpath, which passes along the rear of the estate through park land owned by the Rye House estate, and it's also within the Green Belt. And if we start putting 1.8 metre walls up, that would meet with very serious opposition. I don't want to waste any more of your time, but that's a little context before you hear the objections.
Not at all. I'll ask if anyone has got any questions or clarification for you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I now call upon our next speaker on this application, Scott Laurie. Have I pronounced that correctly? Possibly not.
That's correct.
Oh, is it? Oh, excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And as with everyone else, 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Well, I'm Scott Laurie, as I just said, and I'm an immediate neighbour, 24. I'm also here as an acting chair of the Parklands Residents Committee. So we've got others, 23, 26, 27, and a number of people on the screen as well to represent. We object on a number of serious points, which we hope from your site visit today would be apparent now. I'll use the officer's numbering to address these. 1.3, as Jane's already said, states the fact this development is greenbelt and it's adjacent to ancient woodland. It's adjacent, it's got a beautiful non-designated heritage asset. This development rightly was scrutinised by the council and delivered a quality scheme. We do not want this diluted by 1,000 cuts of standards being dropped. This application, as we see, is the thin end of the wedge, and we need to keep the standards for parking, for character, for setting, but more importantly, safety should be maintained and protected. Under 1.4, the change of appearance was said there was no change of appearance. I beg to differ, unfortunately, on this. The application, as James pointed out, states there's a 1.8 metre screen going around the garden. That would undoubtedly change. Nobody else has that and should be judged on that basis. This will impact views, it will impact appearance, but also it would impact tree roots if that was the case as well, which we asked. And there was an agricultural report requested by your tree officer, which was then not delivered, and instead some drawings were put in, which said there was buildings there before. But then your tree officer has come back and quite rightly said there's new routes coming through this area and they should be protected. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there. Generally, the accuracy of the submitted information is a great concern. Trees have been omitted. The one you saw in the front garden is actually not shown any of the drawings, despite 3 times. The road layout, as we've been touched on, the verge is not the right size. Tracking, therefore, that was submitted is not the right size. The tracking drawing also shows 2 parking spaces adjacent to each other, which is not the submitted scheme. So it's not achievable to actually show the parking. The reversing levels, we've checked with our own highways consultant, and that does not meet standards. So from the point of view of 1.6, in terms of the extension matching the existing house, we would also counter this with saying that nowhere in the development has a low pitch industrial roof that we can find or has been approved. We have all got the same sort of approach to the parapets, the roofs, the windows. These are not being matched in this development. It's a bit Heath Robinson, in our opinion, in terms of actually what's being approached in comparison to the very well considered scheme that you guys looked at approved before. But it's the big thing about highways and safeties we have the most concern of. And you know, as it's been touched on, there's a lot of young families running about in the development, and we do not want to have parking standards diluted. We have got refuse vehicle operators with reversing.
I'm afraid you've had your 3 minutes, but I will ask you a question about safety, though. So I'm afraid we have to cut it there. But I do have a question about safety, so maybe you can expand on it in my question. So I think when looking at the road safety, there is, I imagine your argument might be that removing one of the parking spaces reduces road safety. And is that a key contention of the residents?
It's a key contention, and we also have to maintain 24/7 access to the SUD system there, so there's no allowance for any parking within that hammerhead. We've got operatives. We've sent the drawings in as part of our submission to show that the tracking doesn't work, and you've got refuse vehicle guys coming in there that are going to have to now deal with a lot more reversing issues. I understand one of you guys had to do a 3-point turn in our drive today to actually get out because there was cars parked. We do not want to have that standard of parking imposed upon what was actually a very carefully considered master plan before. It's about health and safety. We've got kids running about. The application, please, should be refused on the basis it's overdevelopment, underparked, and it's not in character.
Thank you. Any further questions? I can't see any, so thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you. I now call upon our next speaker on this application, Mr. Peter Gray. Welcome, Mr. Gray. You've got 3 minutes as and when you're ready.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Peter Gray and I'm the owner of 25 Parklands. And thank you very much for the opportunity to come and support my application, which is for a small domestic extension in the rear of my garden at my house. I must admit, I'm somewhat bemused that this is in front of you actually this evening. The development proposed is, as you've heard from your case officer, very similar indeed to that which would be allowed under permitted development rights. It's also very similar to that which has already been consented several times on this development under delegated powers elsewhere. And most recently, an extension just 2 doors along on a much smaller plot than mine. I don't accept the arguments that have been put forward by the neighbours who are exercised about things which I think are not correct. Your case officer has made a very comprehensive analysis and a detailed paper of all the technical considerations of this application. Makes full clear that this is fully policy compliant, and he recommends that planning consent is granted and that the proposals are very practical in their use. I would merely add for the committee's information that whilst I do show a ground floor bed in one of those rooms at the back, I put that in simply to show that I was future-proofing this house for my later year use. I don't believe it's going to add an extra bedroom or be thought of as a house with 6 bedrooms. So I'd just like to say that. And I actually believe that the opposite is true, because it is true of all of the houses on this estate, notwithstanding what is said, that the ground floor accommodation is frankly insufficient to support all of the upstairs accommodation on these houses. Additionally, by virtue of my private ownership of the turning head in front of my house, which is for my benefit, and I have got a copy of the land registry plan if it's helpful for the committee to see that, but I know it's been submitted early by my architect. I actually believe that there's stronger resilience for car parking demands on this site than actually there is on any other property on this estate by virtue of my ownership. And also, slightly stronger than that which the planning officer has identified.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. As I believe you've seen today, the location of the plot is right in the back far corner of the estate. You will see that the extension cannot be readily seen by any from any public area on this estate. Even my neighbours on beside me have built a building, which means from the ground floor they will not see the extension. So I believe the impact on neighbours and the neighbourhood amenity will be zero. This application is very important to me, which is why I'm here. Given the precedent that has been established elsewhere on the site several times, given there are no statutory objections, given the planner's recommendation, I very much hope you will support this application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask if anyone has any questions and clarification. Councillor Watson.
Just a small one on we note that the majority of this application is already under permitted development. I'm curious what your reason was for going beyond what is already permitted and therefore having to put the planning application in.
The layout of the kitchen with the wall going across evenly and not having having a dogleg within the house was my motivation for that, so that it made a much more attractive internal space.
Thank you.
Further questions? I just want to be sure. So with the 75 centimetres you take off, so I did attend the site visit today. Is it your contention that you can still fit 2 cars on that driveway part, like back to back?
It would be, but because I own the roadway in front of my house as well, it's which allows me to reverse in and out of that property on my own land. I believe it's possible to accommodate cars and very many more actually on that space were I to need to. Not that I do today, but I believe I have considerable flexibility, which actually other houses do not. If you did attend, it would be interesting to know what the roads were like, but we've got neighbours who don't park in their 2 spaces in front of their house and choose to park on the roadway. We have neighbours who have actually built things on their driveways, which mean they can't use those spaces. I'm being very transparent and trying to do this exactly correctly by making an application and being transparent about it all. And I believe it's a very strong application because I believe it's fully policy compliant.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much for your time this evening. I now call on the final speaker on this application. So Councillor Mark Coleman. Councillor Coleman.
Good evening. I'll just check that you can hear me okay.
We can hear you and we can see you, and you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Great, thank you. So good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. My main objections to the application are the loss of off-street parking, the changing characteristics of the Parklands Manor, and the potential impact on the nearby ancient woodland and wildlife. The Local Highways Authority consultation acknowledged the development would result in the property having only one car park space, falling short of the county's standards, and this would lead to on-street parking. It would normally draw an objection. However, because the road is private, it did not. Nevertheless, for the same reason that it would be unacceptable on an adopted road, it is also unacceptable on a private road. It is no less dangerous. If two cars were parked on the reduced driveway, there would be an overhang into the turning head, likely requiring the cars to reverse the access road. Additionally, cars parked in the turning head would be a hazard to the safe manoeuvre of refuse vehicles. Access roads should be designed so that refuse vehicles can operate in forward gear whenever possible. British Standard 5906/2005 recommends a maximum reversing distance of 12 metres. Additionally, reversing routes should be straight and free from obstacles, which is highly unlikely with parked cars and waste bins in the road. In 2018, the Parklands Manor development was contentious, but it was proposed that the existing landscaped grounds across the site would remain open. This development would be contrary to the site remaining open, particularly as there is reference to the 1.8 tall brick screen to enclose the back garden, which would be seen from the Bezelsley footpath number 10. The justification of the significance of the manor house as a heritage asset was the verdant and open appearance, but the built heritage statement acknowledged the proposed development will have an impact on the significance through the construction of a number of new dwellings. However, will not substantially impact on the verdant and open character. This has been achieved through the careful siting and master planning of the proposed dwellings. This application for a 6-bedroom dwelling would change the character of the estate by altering that careful siting and master planning. The forestry officer withdrew a holding objection requiring a tree survey, but I don't believe that he took into consideration the 1.8 brick screen, which would potentially impact on the roots of trees. Parklands is the home to great crested newts, a European protected species under the Conservation Habits and Species Regulation 2017. Work has been done. Thank you. Work has been done in Parklands Manor to increase the number of newts by providing new and better habitats. The planning application makes no reference to survey, mitigation, management, nor monitoring for great crested newts, which surely must be a requirement. In sum, I ask you to decide not to grant planning permission on the grounds of the increased on-street parking that would constitute a danger to residents from reversing cars and refuse vehicles, that it would materially change the opening landscaping, character and heritage benefits of the estate, which the March 2018 Planning Committee report said could be realised through a high quality and considered design.
Councillor Coleman, I'm afraid you've come towards the end of your 3 minutes. So
okay, thank you. I'd like to thank the officers for their work on this.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification for Councillor Coleman? I can't see any, so I'll say thank you very much for your time this evening. And I'll move on to questions for our officer. So has anyone got any questions for Nat? Councillor Hannaby.
Yeah, I've read a very good report. It's a single story side extension. It has permitted rights, but it's here before us today. It is not an application for a 6-bedroom. Is that correct? Well, it is an application for extra area in the house.
Yeah, so there is a bedroom shown on the floor plan.
But we've just heard the explanation there.
Yeah, but
so it could be used for something else.
Yeah, but because it's on the plan, we should consider that.
Exactly right. Yeah.
But they could have shown any room on the floor plan and then in the future put it into a bedroom.
Yeah. But the fact is, it's permitted right, and also the highways officer's given a really good no objection, and why? Because it's privately owned, that area.
Yeah, so I think obviously the Highways Authority, their role is to obviously look after the public highway, and hence they were of the opinion that it didn't affect the public highway.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that safety, etc., aren't material considerations just because it's a private road, and therefore that's why in the report I still consider all those matters and find that it wouldn't have an exception.
I read it, sorry. And of course it's it's near a fence in a cul-de-sac area. Is that correct? So, so who would be the overlooking, the people that are opposite?
In what sense?
Well, if they're overlooking, is there any overlooking? No, that's what I'm trying to get at.
If I can put the plan up.
Not quite. Yes, I've looked at the plan. It's not 100%. But anyway, it's a plan. I'm struggling to find a reason to refuse it, to be honest with you.
We'll turn to more questions and then we'll move
but
into
I am struggling with the permitted rights as well, and private driveway.
Do you want to address Councillor Hannaby's question about overlooking? I'll move on to Councillor.
Yes, overlooking.
The plan here, so you see that the neighbour, the probably only neighbouring property that will see it would be their immediate neighbour to the south. But as stated, there is a structure in the garden right alongside where that would be, which would likely cover any views of it.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Button.
Yes, I'm a bit confused, but 1.8 metre wall, is this really part of the application?
No, so I think potentially what happened, because we have already had one amended application form, was that the agent used the same application form for the previous application which were withdrawn, and certain elements were left on parts of it that weren't actually relevant to this. So I think that was just one thing that was missed, but it's not within development, the description of the development, it's not shown on any of the plans. So it's not something that's proposed. So yeah, I think it's just a mistake on the application form, but we're not granting permission for that essentially.
Right, thanks for that clarification.
Any further questions? In which case, I'm suggest we move into debate on this application. So can I have a motion? Councillor Banstein.
Yes, I propose we accept this application. It's so much of it's a very small expansion on what is permitted development, and I don't see that expansion in itself is any reason to object to this application. So I would support this application.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Wren. Right, I open the floor to debate.
Well, I think, I've really said what I had to say. Is permitted right. It's privately owned. We've heard the applicant get an assurance that he'd be able to get more cars there should he need to. And it's a single story. If it was a double story, maybe a bit different, but it's a single story, and there's no objections from highways.
I mean, I think what I would say is, so I attended the site visit earlier, and like there was a lot of parking on the road, and I am worried. I am worried about the highway safety aspect of it, and that is a material consideration on this application, even though it's only a small bit forward. I think, though, I mean, on balance, I think that I also will vote to approve this application. I think that, I guess, my concern on safety is there, but I think the only way of resolving that would be to insist on a second parking space in front of the house, and I think that would have more of a detrimental impact on the character and the openness of the area. So, I mean, on that basis, I think I will be supporting. But I'm pleased to hear from the presentation we've had. I think it's been useful to clarify what is and what isn't included in this application, because I must say I was looking at all the documents and I was confused. So I think I would like to thank you for clarifying what is and what isn't part of this. So I will be supporting this motion, but any other comments on this? Okay, in which case I'll suggest we take a vote. So those in favour, those against, any abstentions, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to all our speakers this evening. I now move to our next item, which is, let me get this right, which is Wellsaid Cottage, and Nat Power, I believe you're presenting this one.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Just checking. You can hear me and see the screen?
We can hear you and we can see the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. My name is Natalie Power and I'm the current case officer for this application. This proposal for householder development and listed building consent is applying for a 2-storey and single-storey rear extension to this Grade 2 listed building. Wells Head Cottage is a detached Grade 2 listed building located on a corner plot within the village of Harwell. With a 17th century core, the Heritage Officer has described the building fabric of Wells Head Cottage as being of evidential interest in understanding the history of the building and the village, with the exposed timber frame and the building frontage hosting group value as part of the conservation area. The site is currently accessed from the west via Broadway Road, and Wells Head Lane bounds the site to the north, with neighbouring properties including Grade 2 listed Englefield surrounding the site to the east and south. Grade 2 listed Wells Head House is also located over the road to the north. This site is additionally located within Harwell Conservation Area, which is shown hatched green on the map. Here is the existing site plan, some additional photographs of Wells Head Cottage.
Natalie, apologies, well, it's not, the screen isn't moving.
No.
Oh no!
So we're still on the first slide. So apologies, let's see if we can get that moving.
With the green.
Yeah, sorry, as soon as you said map, because I thought we might be getting it. If you could try sharing that again. Okay, oh yes, we can see that now, that's in the right place.
Yes.
Thank you. So if you could just start from that slide again, that would be great. Thank you.
Green.
Okay, so Wells Head Cottage is a detached Grade 2 listed building. Or sorry, have you from the next bit? The site is currently accessed from the west. Is that okay?
Yeah.
By Broadway Road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wells Head Lane bounds the site to the north, with neighbouring properties including Grade 2 listed Englefield surrounding the site to the east and south. Grade 2 listed Wells Head House is also located over the road to the north. The site is additionally located within the Harwell Conservation Area, which is shown hatched green on the map. I've now changed the slide. Can you see this one? Brilliant.
Existing site plan, yes?
Yes, excellent. Here is the existing site plan with some additional photographs of Wells Head Cottage from the road. Here is the proposed site plan showing the new extension highlighted in yellow. I've also included an extract of the ground floor plan demonstrating the car parking arrangement along the northern boundary and the retention of the drainage channel along the southern boundary. These photographs also show the rear elevation and garden of Wells Head Cottage, and in the bottom right-hand photo, you can see the rear elevation of thatched neighbouring listed building Englefield. Here are the existing and proposed elevation plans for the two-storey and single-storey rear extension. The proposed built form has been highlighted in yellow for you. Looking now at the extracts of the floor plans, the extensions are to project from the southeasternmost corner of the listed building, hosting a garden room, utility area and downstairs bathroom at ground floor, with an additional ensuite bedroom created upstairs. There are two new side-facing first floor windows shown here, the larger of which would serve the proposed bedroom and the smaller of which would serve the ensuite bathroom. In terms of outlook, concerns have been raised that these upper floor windows would have a harmful impact upon private neighbouring amenity. The smaller ensuite bathroom window will face the rear elevation of southern neighbour Englefield, and it is officer's opinion that subject to this window being obscure glazed and hosting an openable top hung vent only, this window would have a limited impact upon adjacent private neighbouring amenity. The larger window serving the proposed bedroom will have a direct outlook over the garden of Wells Head Cottage, maintaining over 21 metres to the boundary of Wells Head House to the north. It is officer's opinion that this side-facing larger window is positioned at a sufficiently oblique angle relative to the nearest eastern neighbour and would not result in harmful direct overlooking. The top photo has been taken from the rear garden of Wells Head Cottage, and the bottom photo has been taken from the eastern neighbour's garden. The red arrow is to indicate the approximate position of the proposed extension. I appreciate that we didn't undertake a site visit for these applications, so I have put together some more images of the site. So these are the photographs to show Wells Head Cottage from Broadway to the east and from Wells Head Lane to the north. And here the left-hand photo shows the rear elevation of the property, and the top right photo shows the rear garden of Wells Head Cottage and the rear elevation of the neighbouring listed building Englefield. And then facing in the other direction, the bottom right photo shows the rear garden of Wells Head Cottage and the side and rear elevation of the eastern neighbouring property Osterley. These photos are taken from the garden of the eastern neighbour Osterley. I've added the red arrows to indicate the approximate position of the extension. If it helps to visualise the proposal, it's understood from the plans that the overall height of the extension would not exceed the height of the lower chimney of Wells Head Cottage, which you can just about see to the left of the trellis screen in the left-hand photo there. These photos were taken from the garden of the southern neighbour at Englefield. And lastly, these photographs are to illustrate the relationship between the two listed buildings. The first two photographs were taken from within the site, and the third was taken from an upper storey window of the neighbouring property at Englefield. The drainage channel shown on the amended composite plan can be seen here. Here are extracts of all the proposed plans together with some of the photographs of the site. The proposed new built form has been highlighted in yellow for you. I hope you found the site context and additional images helpful. As submitted, the Heritage Officer has not objected to the proposed works. So for the reasons outlined within the committee report, on balance, it is Officer's recommendation that this householder and listed building consent proposal be approved, subject to the conditions set out within your agenda report packs. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Natalie. We'll return to you for some questions once we've heard from our two speakers on this application. So the first speaker is Kath Convery, who's speaking against this application. Kath Convery, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much, councillors, and thank you, officers. That was a really clear explanation by Natalie. Thank you, Natalie. I want to talk in objection to this particular plan. As has already been articulated, Wells Head is a Grade 2 listed early 17th century cottage. It's in the centre of Harwell Village Conservation Area, and it has previously had a host of objections from the Heritage Officer whenever they've wanted to make changes to this particular building under previous planning officers. There have been objections because of the heritage nature of this building. As has been described, the house itself is very close to Englefield. And frankly, that's one of the main objections to this property and this particular application. The main objection is that it proposes to enlarge the cottage site by almost a third again on what is a very small plot. You've seen by the photographs how close it is to the Grade 2 listed building Englefield, which is equally as old as Wells Head. It wouldn't be an unusual statement to say that the children of the village do look at the whole of this area as a conservation area when they're undertaking history in their primary school. Photographers come to paint it, to photograph it, painters come to paint this area. So it is hugely attractive. So we've got a problem with the size of this particular application, but also there is a problem, and this goes to Councillor Hannaby's issue with the last application. There is a problem with the second storey causing a lack of privacy to Osterley House. If you're in Osterley House, you can presently see into the downstairs summer house, and that's going to be where the new building is. So you'll be able to see not only into the new bedroom downstairs, but into the bedroom upstairs as well. And that we feel is overlooking and a loss of privacy to Osterley House. The application also talks, and Natalie didn't talk to it, but the application also talks to more off-street parking. And I'd just like to draw councillors' attention to the fact that the green space in front of Wells Head House is public land rather than belonging to the house itself. There is enough room at the moment. There is
30 seconds.
Thank you. There is enough room at the moment for parking within the garage and on the drive immediately in front of the garage. There is no need to put any additional parking onto this house. I'd like you to consider objecting to this particular development because of the overdevelopment of this particular site, and that will then sit with consistency in other applications we've got in the conservation area. I'm very surprised that the Heritage Officer hasn't said similarly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'll now see if there are any questions of clarification for you. Any questions? No. Well, thank you very much for your time this evening, Kath Convery. And I'll now call upon our next speaker.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Councillor Hayley Gascoigne. Councillor Gascoigne.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can't see you yet, but we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you and see you, and 3 minutes when you're ready.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, thanks for having us speak today and bringing this to committee. Deborah and I were asked to call in on a few issues, and Kath Conbury has already mentioned them just there, but just to be clear, I think there are 3 key issues. The first one being the historical nature and architectural nature of this building. It's Grade 2 listed, as you know, it holds value locally, and you can see from the plan it's quite a large increase in size compared to what it is, and it is very close to the edge of the plot. The second is the car parking requirements. The OCs, maybe you can check whether what the actual requirements are for car parking, because the OCC highways officer didn't make a comment, but I'm concerned that the requirements may not be being met here. And the third thing is the impact on the neighbours. So as already mentioned, the loss of privacy, the building having a second story now closer to the neighbour and looking in, you can see from the bedroom into it. But I think the key thing is actually the space, and there's a concern that the houses are quite close together. And I mean, you saw the pictures actually, and that the neighbouring home, Englefield, has thatch roof, and so needs to be able to access this for I guess maintenance and all that sort of stuff. And it would create a very small gap. And actually one of the things that was pointed out to me, I don't own an old house, but they don't have very straight walls, right? So it might, the gap may be even smaller as you sort of go out beyond where it is today. And particularly if there are fixtures onto the new building like guttering and so on, it could make the gap mean that there isn't access. And I think in the application or in the papers, it says this can be sorted out outside of this planning. But the concern here is that once the building starts, it's too late, isn't it? If the access is too narrow, the access is too narrow, and you're not going to knock it down. So I think those would be the key things. So if you could just ask questions of the officers on these things, those will be what I would like to be considered as concerns that have been raised to Deborah and myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gascoigne. I'll just check there are no questions for you. I can't see any, so thank you very much. And I'll turn to questions for our officer, for Natalie. Any questions? Councillor Hannaby.
Oh, hello, Natalie.
Hello. Good evening.
I'm very au fait with listed. I've lived in 2, renovated 2 myself, so I'm quite au fait with listed. On the let's get to the one about the access being narrow. If you're needed to do some repairs on it, you have got the right of access to to do those repairs. So have you got any comments on those?
Sorry, just to clarify, you're talking about the maintenance of the thatch and the rear of the building?
Yeah, yes, it was brought up, yeah, but there is a right of access.
Yes, so there are lots, again, as the applicants and the neighbour has raised, is a quite complex issue, but essentially the land that the applicant's proposing to construct the extension upon is solely owned by them, so I have to take that into consideration in the first layer. The second layer is I do appreciate it's very close. As you saw from the photos, the buildings are very close together. But in this instance, officers considered that the maintenance side of this application would become a civil matter. I do appreciate from the plans, it looks like the extension is moving closer to the building than the existing chimney, but actually the extension will be set marginally further away from the rear elevation of that listed building than the existing chimney. And the neighbours did submit some photographs of the scaffolding that had been erected, and I do believe it will be tight. There's no doubt about that, because it's a very compact site, but I don't think it will be impossible to put that scaffolding up to keep that thatch maintained. And I also have to acknowledge that our heritage officer did have a look at it, and she considered the comments, and she did not raise an objection on the maintenance grounds. She believes that there is sufficient space there for the thatch to be maintained for Englefield.
I think that's very important. And the other thing is, the other thing is the the issue about parking and the fact that the highways officer hasn't come back. Is that because they are in villages? This can happen sometimes, that cars of a 2 or 3 car family that will have to find their parking in the village, or is it just the fact that he hasn't had time to respond?
In this instance, the highways officer has responded and hasn't raised an objection to the parking arrangement shown on the plan. So he is happy. In accordance with our current OCC standards, it's up to 2 spaces provided for a 4-bedroom property in a village location like this one. And they've got an existing garage which can be used for parking, and they've got the external driveway space within the curtilage of their dwelling house, which can be used for the second space.
And none of our officers have objected to this development?
No.
Heritage, no.
Heritage has just asked for some conditions, making sure that we've got information about groundworks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's me done.
Great. So I have a question to do with overlooking, and particularly the looking into the windows. So I'm trying to get my head around this. So I understand that there's going to be, there's going to be quite a long, relatively close, like within sort of 1 meter, not necessarily closer than it is now. Sorry, please come back.
Did you want me to bring up that slide? Would that be helpful?
Could you? Is that all right? That would help me.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I guess I understand the window in the bathroom is going to be high and obscured. I just want to be certain that, like, how far away is that from windows on Englefield's house?
Bathroom window.
It's a bathroom window. It's going to be high, but I just want to make sure there are no other windows. And when you say it's not going to be overlooking, how far away from the other windows will they be?
So the bathroom window on the south will be, because the closest point is 90 centimetres, so it will be a bit more than that. But hold on, I can measure it for you. 1 second.
Thank you. And just to be clear, is that the only window on that side?
Yes. There is an existing window already on the existing listed building, but in the extension, that's the only window on that side.
Understood. And then so if you could just measure that, and then one more question on overlooking.
So that will be 92 centimetres from the rear elevation of Englefield, but we've asked, well, I recommend that window is obscure glazed and non-opening apart from a top hung vent. And then
the other thing was about the overlooking in the new, is it the new bedroom? There's a concern about overlooking in the new bedroom. So could you just comment on that? Because we heard from that one there in the new extension that would feature some overlooking as well, is what we've heard. So could you maybe comment on that?
Yes. So just to answer your first question about the distances, that distance from the edge of that first floor window looking north towards the first floor window of the eastern neighbour Osterley, that would be about 7.5 metres.
Okay.
And again, this is a very, very interesting point raised. In this instance, because it's not direct overlooking, in officer's opinion, it's not harmful enough to warrant a refusal of this application.
Right.
I think the nearest, perhaps the best illustration is if, say, for example, you've got semi-detached properties or terrace properties where they've all got first floor windows and they've technically all got a level of kind of obscure overlooking of each other's gardens. That's probably the closest relationship I would describe in this instance. So there may be some indirect overlooking, but there are no windows proposed on that eastern elevation. So there's no direct harmful overlooking in this instance.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I can't see any, so I'll suggest that we move into debate. Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Hannaby.
I would like to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
So we need 2 motions on this. We need a householder followed by a listed. So we'll start with the householder. So for both, we have to vote them separately. So we'll start with the householder, although we can debate them together. That's fine.
Yes.
So do I have a seconder for the householder application? Councillor Batstone. And would you also like to second the listed building application?
I will second the listed building one as well.
Okay, we will vote on them separately, but we will debate them now together. Is there any debate on this application?
I would just like to say that listed buildings are very precious, and I know because I've done them myself and have quite some time working with the officers to make it absolutely perfect. And we all want it to look perfect and everything. And I do note that there's no objection from the Harwell Parish Council, no objection from the Heritage. So on that, and it sits on itself on its own site. We've seen that the small window is going to be glazed, which would probably be the problematic one, if anything. And I've also established that they could get on to do the maintenance, because it's all things that I've had to deal with myself, and I know how crucial it is with neighbours. So with all that, I really can't see any reason for objection.
Okay, anything further on that?
Yes, I would emphasise. I think the fact that the Heritage Officer has no problems and that there are 2 parking spaces there is sufficient. Not sufficient material objection to this application.
Councillor Rayner.
Can I ask what might be a ridiculous question, and hopefully genuine, or the officers might answer. If the buildings are that old and they're listed and they're that close together, will there be no damage done with the extension of the wall?
No, I note that they said about the footings, but this is a new build in the grounds of.
But it is a very large extension there, and I think. It does seem uncomfortably close, but ultimately there is no conservation objection. The Heritage Officer hasn't objected, and on that ground, I don't think I can refuse this application. Though I am, if we had a Heritage objection, we would be having a different discussion. I think is where I stand. Yes. It does feel very close.
Although, as they've said, no closer than it currently is.
No.
Yeah,
it's a built-up area on that corner. I know that corner.
It does. I'm going to support this application, but it does feel very. It does feel potential overdevelopment, but the Heritage Officer has not said so. And on that basis, I will be supporting this as well.
What she has said about the materials, of course, and that is something that will come out later. But
understood. Right. Shall we vote on this then? So if we start with the householder application, so all those in favour, those against, any objections? That's unanimous. And now the listed building application, those in favour, those against, any objections? That is also unanimous. Thank you very much. I now turn to our final application, which is the Vale Cottage, High Street, Uffington. And Natalie, you're presenting on this one as well.
Yes, me again. 1 second. Can you see the screen?
We can, and I'll let you know when they flick through. If you could just say when you have flicked, then I'll let you know.
Excellent, thank you, Chair. So this proposal is for householder development and a listed building consent, and it's applying for a series of internal and external works for this Grade 2 listed building, in addition to works to the front boundary wall and the installation of a new air source heat pump to the rear of the building. This application attends planning committee as the applicant is a ward councillor. I have now changed the slide.
Natalie, can we just pause quickly? Yes.
Sure.
Councillor Briggs.
Conflict of interest. I know the person who's the applicant.
I think that my understanding, I'll ask Democratic, my understanding is that is fine, but I will ask Democratic.
Depending on your relationship, yeah, obviously. Well, she's a fellow councillor. Yes, no, that's not an issue. Double check.
That's right, thank you.
I just saw the name there.
Always worth double checking.
Yeah.
Right, Natalie, back to you.
Vale Cottage is a semi-detached Grade 2 listed building located within the village of Uffington. The historic England listing highlights that the Vale Cottage and adjoining listed building Lizzie's Cottage are good examples of 17th century vernacular architecture. The site is currently accessed from the High Street to the east, and neighbouring residential properties, including Grade 2 listed Lizzie's Cottage, surround the site to the north, west and south. This site is additionally located within Uffington Conservation Area, which is shown hatched green on the map. Here is the composite site plan.
The map, Natalie, I'm afraid the map isn't showing.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Hold on. Oh, technical difficulties. Apologies.
We can now see the map. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. So this is the composite site plan with some additional photographs of Vale Cottage from the road and from the side. I've now changed the screen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect. Here are the composite elevation plans showing the external works proposed. In summary, the proposed front door is to be replaced. The proposed porch roof is to be replaced, matching the existing height and design. Minor repairs are proposed to the ground floor timber window frames. The existing breeze block is to be removed from the front boundary wall and replaced with a reclaimed red brick. And the existing height of the wall is to be maintained at the same height. And a new air source heat pump is to be located to the rear of the dwelling under cover of an existing carport. I'm now moving to the next slide. Looking now at extracts of the floor plans, the applicants have helpfully highlighted on the plans the nature of the internal works proposed, and in summary, at the ground floor, the floors in the existing dining room, entrance hall and front lounge are to be replaced with breathable glasscrete and a limestone tile floor covering with underfloor heating installed. There's to be internal insulation of cork and lime plaster proposed to be applied to the front wall, and an internal partition between the existing entrance hall and front lounge is to be repaired, replacing some rotten sections of timber, but retaining as much historic woodwork as possible. And at first floor, I've changed the slide. The proposal is looking to apply more internal insulation to the front and southern end walls of the building. Hopefully on your screens, you should now see some site photos. These photographs show the Vale Cottage from the High Street.
Yep.
And here the top photo shows the side elevation of the listed building, the carport in the middle where the air source heat pump will be located, and along the bottom of the screen, moving left to right, we've got photographs from within the carport, of the front porch, the front door proposed to be replaced, and the front boundary wall. Here are extracts of all the proposed plans together, and the proposed external works have been highlighted in yellow on the elevations for you. And with the submission of additional information surrounding the practicalities of the new floors and the specifications of the air source heat pump, the Heritage Officer and Environmental Health Officer have raised no further objections to the works. So for the reasons outlined within the committee report, on balance, it is Officer's recommendation that this household and listed building consent proposal be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Natalie. We don't have any speakers on this application, so I'll just ask the committee if they've got any questions for you off the bat.
Thank you. I'm interested in the conversation about the heat pump, because we're all trying to. It's very difficult with listed, and things like putting solar panels and things that we were encouraged to do. But when you get to listed, it's a difficulty. So yeah, but they've managed to get over the fact that it's going to be rather large for because it needs to be for the cottage.
Yes, there were just 2 points raised. So from the environmental health perspective, they just wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be excessive noise generation from the air source heat pump, just given the size of it, but also where it's located in that kind of carport but open-sided location. And that was overcome. They submitted lots of acoustic information for that. And then from a heritage point of view, our heritage officer just wanted to make sure that all the infrastructure associated with the air source heat pump wasn't going to interfere with historic fabric. So they submitted that information too, and that's now been addressed as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? I can't see any, so I'm suggesting moving to debate. So could I please have a motion on the household and listed? Councillor Horson.
I propose we accept the recommendation.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Briggs. Okay, and I'll take that as both for the household and the listed building. Is there any debate? I can't see it.
The house, if that's
Okay.
I was thinking of my little coffee house.
Okay, so if there is no debate on that basis, I'm going to suggest that we take a vote on the householder application first. So all those in favour, those against, any abstentions? So that's unanimous. And then we vote on the listed building motion. Those in favour, those against, any abstentions? That's also unanimous. So with that, it just leaves me to close the meeting and thank all of our speakers this evening, all of our officers for their work, and indeed to you all councillors. So if I could just get confirmation from Bertie that the meeting has ended.